Hi, Promise students. My name is Liz.
Hi, Promise students. My name is Victoria Davy.
And we're peer coaches for the Promise Plus program. And today we're going to cover professionalism.
So a little bit about the overview of what we're going to go over. So we're going to talk about creating emails, setting up your voicemail in a professional manner, how to get the most out of your office hours, and also networking.
The first topic we're going to cover is creating emails. So when creating emails, there's 4 things we have outlined that we think is extremely important for you to include in your email. The first thing is a salutation. So when you're first starting your email, make sure that you start with dear or hello, followed by their title or prefix name. An example of this is Dear Professor Garcia. The second thing we want to highlight is to make sure that you have a subject line. So you don't want to send an email with no subject line, just because when you do send an email, it does give context on the header on what the email is going to be about. You want to make sure that they're short and include the class that you're emailing about. So if you're taking a History 1 class, make sure that you put like History 1 questions in the subject line or whatever you're emailing about to give context into what the email might be about. The third thing is to introduce yourself. So make sure you give context on who you are, so they have a frame of reference, right? So making sure that you state your name and what class you're taking with them or took with them if it's for like a letter of recommendation. And last but not least is why you're emailing. So making sure that you're clear why you're emailing them, making it short, simple, and giving context. We also recommend that for letters of recommendation to include deadlines, any flyers, links, resumes that you want to attach to that as well, any supporting document that might help them make their decision of writing you a letter of recommendation or give insight into the type of student that you are so they can write your letter of recommendation more swiftly and easily.
So the first email example we're going to talk about is the general class questions. So in the subject line, you want to have the class that you're taking, as well as a little bit about what you're emailing about. So in this case, it's going to be the assignment deadline question. So you're going to start with your salutation, hello, Professor so-and-so. Then you're going to go into your introduction, which is my name is, and then put your name. And I am currently enrolled in your 11 a.m. history class. That line is important. You want to make sure that you let your professors know what time and what class you're taking, because normally professors are teaching multiple sections and they may have different assignments for each class. So you want to make sure that they know that you're in what class you're in and what time you're taking. Then you go into a little bit of the context of why you're emailing. So in the syllabus, the deadline for our latest assignment is listed as December 9th. However, in class on Monday, you mentioned December 12th as the deadline. So next, you're going to follow up with your question. Could you please verify the correct deadline? And then you want to do your sign off, which is thank you so much for your time. Sincerely, your name. So the next email example we're going to look at is how to approach office hours. So again, in your subject line, History 1 office hours. So you start out with your salutation again. So hello, Professor so-and-so, and then your introduction. And remember to add your time and your class in there as well. And then you go into some context. I am struggling to understand the structure of developing a good thesis. I have visited the Writing Center for assistance, but wanted to know if you were available to meet during your office hours to talk more about it. So next you follow up with your question. Can I stop by your office hours on Tuesday at 1 p.m.? And then you do your sign off. So the next example is the letter of recommendation. So again, you're going to start out with your subject line. However, you want to make sure you add request into the subject line because you don't want it to seem like you're demanding a letter of recommendation from them. you're just requesting that they write you a letter of recommendation. So you're going to go in with your salutation again, and then your introduction. So your email is going to read a little bit like, I have greatly enjoyed and benefit from the 2 or 3 classes that I've taken with you over the past however many years. I was hoping you might know me well enough and have a high enough regard for my abilities to write a general recommendation for my graduate school application. And then that will change depending on what you're asking them for a letter of recommendation for. So then you're going to add your request into that introduction as well. So your information, so you're going to add any information that they might need to write you a great letter of recommendation. So provide any links, attach any documents that they might need, and then you can also request to meet them for office hours if you would like to discuss it further, which you can add in your email, and then your sign off.
Thank you for that, Victoria. Yeah, writing emails can be extremely hard, especially when you don't know how to ask a professor. So these are just some templates to help navigate you getting started on writing emails for those specific things, especially for letters of recommendation. The next thing I'm going to talk about is setting up your voicemail. This is going to be very brief, but we wanted to cover it just because we've encountered a lot of voicemails as Promise Plus peer coaches that we found very unprofessional in some sense. So we just wanted to give you guys a brief overview. So voicemails should be 2 things, right? The first one should be, it should be short. The second is that it should be appropriate. So Victoria and I, when we call students, sometimes we'll get like voicemails that are like, hello, hi, haha, just kidding, which can throw us off, right? Especially when we start saying like, oh, hi, like we're calling to tell you about this Promise Plus deadline or whatever it may be. So just making sure that they're appropriate and you're not tricking people or being inappropriate in the voicemail. So an example of this is, you have reached Liz. Unfortunately, I can't take your call right now. Please leave a message with your name and number so I can get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Another way to set up a voicemail that's appropriate is just the default one that's on your phone. So it's, like the automatically generated one, and you could just say your name or your phone number, just so that folks know who they're calling. If it is like, maybe we accidentally call your parents' number or a sibling's number, right? So making sure we know we're calling the right person. And this is especially important also when you're applying to jobs, right? You don't want them to give you a call and then for you not to answer and it be a very inappropriate voicemail or a voicemail that throws them off as well. So voicemails can be extremely important when moving forward and, looking for jobs and becoming a new professional in the field.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about office hours. So when you're going into office hours, what are some conversation topics to bring up with your professor? A lot of students may have a little bit of apprehension going into office hours because they don't know what to talk about with their professors. So some excellent topics are your course grades. So the expectations that the professor has set, if you need any clarifications on the syllabus or anything that you may struggle with. Professors want to know that you are taking an interest in your academic life. So meeting with them to talk about course material and course grades are a great conversation topic. Next is material. So homework, readings, any clarifications on readings, and then modern applications to whatever you're reading. So let's say you wanted to talk to your professor about a line in a book that you were reading for class, or you wanted to talk about characters in a novel that you're reading for an English class, or you just had questions about the homework. Those are also great conversation topics. And then you can also talk to your professor about their educational journey, as well as research and the field of study. So professors were students before they were professors. So they have a lot of insight into getting to where you want to go. And especially if a professor is working in a field that you want to work in the future, it's great to talk about, what they did, the experiences they had, and different research opportunities that they did during their undergraduate or graduate time as students. So professors are great people to pick their brains, and if you have any questions about that, they're the great people to talk to. So some office hours tips: come prepared. So prepare a list of questions, whether that be mentally or if you need to write it out because you had questions on an essay or something like that. Come prepared so that way you can get all of your questions answered and you're not fumbling and taking too much of their time, especially if your slot is only a 30-minute slot for their office hour. You also want to make sure that you're being courteous to other students' time as well, especially if you're going around midterms or finals to their office hours. So come prepared with questions. In relation to that, bring any materials that you may need to talk about. So if you have questions on your rough draft, bring your rough draft with you so that way the professor can see the comments that they made, as well as talk with you about the portion that they have written about or that you may have questions about. Bring textbooks, any course reading materials that you may have questions about. Bring them with you to your office hours. Also be open to their feedback. So they are not giving you criticism in order to make you feel bad. They're giving you criticism in order to help build you as a student. So come in with an open mind and be willing to receive the comments that they're giving. And then every professor is different, like every person is different. A lot of people detach, them as professors being people because of their title as a professor. So they are people first. So every office hour experience with each professor that you have is going to be different depending on the type of person that they are. So be open to them as a person as well.
Thank you, Victoria. So the next topic we're going to cover is networking. I want to preface this by saying networking is a huge topic to cover, and so we're just going to cover a very small portion of it because it is really extensive, but we do feel like it's something that's really important for you all to learn. So where does networking happen, right? When we traditionally think about networking, we think of this picture in the top left corner, right? So dressed up very professionally, having drinks, talking to colleagues in a professional setting. But networking can happen anywhere, right? It can happen in a meeting with a counselor, going over your education plan. It can happen at a formal dining event on campus. It can happen at clubs on campus as well, right? So networking with other people that are a part of the club, the advisors, any speakers that come in, and it can also happen at a gym. These are a lot less formal spaces, but networking does happen in them. So when we're thinking about networking, think beyond the professional setting of a conference or a formal event, right? Networking can really happen anywhere. It can be with your friends' friends, right? So when you start to think about where you want to transfer to or what your major is, being a part of the psychology club, for example, you can reach out to folks who used to be a part of the psychology club to get insight into maybe what school they transferred to and what their experience was like there within the psychology major. So networking can happen in a lot of spaces, and so don't feel pressured to have to dress up formally and attend networking events and have classy or attend classy events as well. But networking can happen anywhere. So I encourage you to think about these questions as I read through them. They're really important when thinking about starting to network. So what does networking look like, right? So beyond the environment, beyond the setting, what does it look like to you? Why do we network to begin with? What are some benefits of networking? And these are all topics that we're going to cover through this presentation, but we wanted you all to start thinking about them and what it means to you.
So what are some parts of networking that intimidate you? So keep this question in mind with our presentation. So as a young professional or as a young academic, networking is very scary, especially when you don't know what to talk about or you're a little shy like I am. I'm not always a very talkative person. So there are a lot of parts of networking that are intimidating. And, like we talked about earlier, every person is different. So every thing that might intimidate one person may not intimidate another person. So we're going to watch a video with Zendaya. When we think about networking, and especially in this presentation, we're talking about networking in academic spaces, but networking goes far beyond that. And as young professionals, what does that look like in every field? So Zendaya is obviously an actress, and she is talking about her experience with networking. So make sure that you're listening to some of the things that may have intimidated her, as well as how she has overcome those fears.
Bad, but you have to pretend like you're interested in it,
Wait, what?
You have to pretend like you're really interested in the things that they might be saying, which is hard.
Then you're not starting the small talk conversations. You've mastered listening to small talk, is what you're saying?
Really what it is mastering asking questions. Right? Right. As long as you can ask them a few questions, they'll love you. So you just gotta be like, oh cool. Well, what kind of things are you interested in? Oh wow. Let him talk, let him talk, let him talk. Oh, that's crazy. Where at? You don't have to reveal anything about yourself, whatever. And then they think, that you have a connection and cool and, whatever. And it works, and you have to do it. In this industry, you have to do it. And I was so bad at it. And I feel like people thought I was an asshole, but I was really just a shy teenager that didn't know how to talk to people. So I've gotten better at that. I guess people don't think I'm cold anymore for that reason. But it's also good for business relationships. I think I've been able to actually genuinely have better business relationships with people, and be able to be like, oh, hey, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, and then we can talk about that, whatever they said last time that I actually remembered and retain that information. And now we can talk. And now we're talking about a project that we might work on together. And oh my gosh, let's go get coffee and let's do this and da da da. And then now you have somebody that you can say, oh yeah, I met so-and-so who's the head of whatever and blah, 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 blah. And now you have a joke with each other because every time you see them, you ask about their dog or whatever it is, so that kind of banter or whatever is important. And it's part of the schmoozing and the whatever. It is kind of part of it. And it's just about being authentic and be true to yourself. But also, you have to play the game a little bit, it's part of it.
I hope everybody enjoyed that. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that Zendaya talked about in her speech. So one of the things she covered about networking is active listening. So she was saying that she mastered listening to small talk conversations and asking questions in order to facilitate further conversation. So when we talk about active listening, we're talking about listening and not necessarily listening in order to ask questions, but listening to retain information. And that is basically what she's talking about when she's talking about, having further conversations with people later. Like she said, bringing up someone's dog or someone's pet later on in the conversation. So active listening is important. She also brought up repetition. So when you see people at different events, you're making sure that you're talking to them multiple times and building a relationship with them in order to network later on about projects or different things. And she also talks about understanding when to talk. So she was talking about her experiences when she was younger and not networking with people and them thinking that she was cold. So it's important to know when to network with people.
So something that Zendaya also talked a little bit about is preparation, right? Making sure that you're prepared when walking into these situations. And an elevator speech is the perfect way to do that, right? I know when I step into spaces, sometimes I'm not thinking, like my brain is so overwhelmed with having to converse with people and having to figure out what's the right thing to say at the right time. And it can be overwhelming and intimidating, right? So being able to prepare an elevator speech, basically an introduction about myself, is extremely helpful, right? It breaks the ice. It explains who you are, why you're there, and can be extremely helpful when, for stepping into these spaces. And we're going to break down that elevator speech, right? So the first thing is when you're creating your elevator speech, making sure that you state your name and your pronouns, right? So, hello, my name is Liz. My pronouns are she, her, hers. The second thing, especially as a student, your school, major, and year. I'm currently a fourth year student at UCSB, majoring in sociology. The third thing is career aspiration. This can be tailored into the specific setting that you're in, right? So like if you're at a club, maybe not talking about your career aspiration, maybe talking about why you're there, which is number 4. So tailor it to the situation and to the setting. But still having like the similar outline, right? So a career aspiration, I'm extremely passionate about student affairs and I really want to go into a community college in California and be able to blah, 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 blah. Right. Number 4 is why you're there. So I'm really excited to be here today and I hope I can gain a lot of knowledge. You can also say, I'm really excited to be a part of this club. I finally get to learn more about my major and share this space with people with similar aspirations and goals. So your elevator speech is just to help you prepare something beforehand so that you're not as nervous walking into these situations. And some benefits of networking, right? So building community. Later on, we're going to go over the networking chart and the extent to that, but being able to create a community on campus, right? So we know that sense of belonging is extremely important on campus, and the bigger your networking community is, the safer you feel on campus oftentimes. That was my experience. So being able to network with not only peers, but professors, with counselors, with admin folks, people in student life, just building that community that is, a part of like your home away from home is extremely important and one of the benefits of networking. The second thing, which is probably one of the more popular ones when we think about networking, is the opportunities that open up. It's not always job opportunities, right? It can be internship opportunities. It could be opportunities to volunteer on a panel. It can be all kinds of things, but it really does open up opportunities. For example, like, one of my mentors was like, hey, I know this person who has like an internship available. Are you interested? Right? I know you have a great work ethic. I know you as a person and your values. And I feel like you'll fit into this role really well and thrive in this role. Because, networking is building relationships. So they know you deeper than they would know maybe a student in their classroom or somebody who just goes to one appointment a semester. So yeah, opening up opportunities.
Networking is also informational. So like we talked about before, going to office hours and some conversation topics, you can always ask different professionals about their experiences and their journeys getting into the career. So for example, I am talking to different librarians because I would like to be a librarian one day. And so I'm asking them the benefits and the things that they like about their job, as well as as the cons of their job. So networking is very informational because you can ask them about their journeys. It's also empowering. So you are getting to know a community of people who are also like-minded in the same way that you are. And then you're also telling them about yourself and your story, which is also empowering and can empower others. So in that aspect, it is empowering by giving information about yourself and your goals and your aspirations.
Thank you. So like I said before, right, the power of networking, like you can know one person, that person can know 3 people who can know like 30 people. So there's no limits, right, to networking. I can have one mentor who used to go to UCSB, who now has a colleague who runs EOP, who can connect me to them, right, who can give me access to these resources that I wouldn't otherwise know how to navigate so easily without that one person. So definitely leveraging your network, knowing not only what they have to offer, but what you have to offer to them as well. Again, they know you on a deeper level than they might know other people who just like, stop by for one office hours and just leave. So yeah, it's the power of networking is so much bigger than the 2 people that you know within your network. So some networking advice, like Zendaya said, project what you want to receive. So if you're projecting like this very stoic face, you have your arms crossed, you're not really in it, like you're off in the corner, not wanting to talk to anyone, nobody's gonna walk up to you, right? You're gonna look intimidating, you're gonna look upset, nobody's gonna want to interact with you. So definitely when you're in networking spaces, be open to people, right? Everybody has so much to offer, and it's such there's beauty in being able to network formally and informally. So definitely be open and receptive. And a way to do that, right, is by using inviting verbal and nonverbal behaviors. So in this chart on the right hand side, facial expressions, gestures, voice and speech, posture, right? Like if you are giving off like angry facial expressions and you're very aggressive with your gestures, people are not going to receive that very well as they would somebody who's open and using their hands to gesture in a positive way, and using a positive voice and affirmations and speech like that.
So like Liz said before, preparing questions and conversation topics beforehand will alleviate some of the anxiety or stress going into networking events or going into office hours or going into club meetings. So prepare your conversation topics, have your elevator pitch ready, and you'll feel a little bit more confident going into networking spaces. Know what you bring to the table. So you are an asset. You have unique perspectives, you have unique talents, and you have unique abilities that you bring to networking events. So it's not just about what they can give you, it's also about what you can give them. And make sure that you are following up and keeping in touch. So after a long, networking event, let's say a formal dining event, you meet a lot of people, but you don't follow up or you don't keep in touch with them, what was the purpose? So you want to make sure that you are emailing them if they gave you their email and saying, thank you, I had a great time. Is it okay if I ask you questions in the future? Things like that, so that they know that you are continuously interested in them as well as what they have to offer.
And a great way to follow up and keep in touch is through informational interviews, which I encourage you all to look into. Informational interviews are kind of like a one-on-one interview that you are interviewing them and asking them questions about their profession, which can be displayed or can be shared in networking, just in a more intimate setting, right? I also forgot to mention in the picture on the right-hand side, other things to keep in mind are universal traits, the culture, being aware of the environment that you're stepping into. If you're going into a conference that talks about brain surgery, you're not going to talk about, our architecture, right? So you want to make sure that you're aware of what spaces you're stepping into and how to prepare beforehand. Knowing your personal habits, right? If you know that you, play with your hands a lot when you're nervous, making sure you have your hands in your pocket, or, being aware of how to stop that. So this is just some advice for networking that has helped myself and Victoria that we think is important for you all to know. And before we wrap up this presentation, I want you all to know that you already have a network. So you have your Promise Plus network, that's peer coaches, counselors, admin support, all of the coordinators. You're already a part of our Promise Plus family as a student, and we want to know that you can access us whenever you need to. PCs, peer coaches have all been Mounties before, have transferred and gotten their BA or BS. So you can always come to us if you have any questions or concerns. Also, the coordinators and counselors, they all have a wealth of information that they're always happy to share with you all.
So stay connected with us. Since we are part of your network, you can reach out to us through Instagram. We are pretty active there, as well as calling us at our office number or emailing us. And we are also on YouTube. And if you have any questions about requirements or Promise Post calendars or making appointments, you can always look at our website.
Thank you. Have a good day.